Hey guys, in this video we're gonna go over the perfect save data for every single character in this game. I'm of course aware that establishing like the truly perfect save data is almost impossible. So I'm gonna give you honorable mention when it comes to items, when it comes to what neutral cards you should get, etc. So let's jump in and take a look at the first perfect save data with Luke and break it down. And by the way, there are timestamps in the description down below in case you don't want to sit through this very long video and you just want to find the character that you are looking for, then use the timestamps in the description down below. Alright, here is the save data for Luke. Here we can already see every single best epiphany for every single card applied. Now there's more to it of course, because you wanna remove cards and you wanna copy cards. And the way you go about this is you will remove the skill that gives you a shield, shadow concealment. And the card that you want to copy will be rapid fire. Of course, right? Luke is all about attacking a lot, critting a lot, and creating bullets. Those ones right here. So you aim to get as many copies of rapid fire into your save data. I will only showcase 2 copies here, but right, if you get 3, 4, the more the better. Okay, then we of course have items in equipment is what it's called in our save data as well. And the best equipment for Luke is the following. For your weapon slot, you will use the RFS 17, which increases your crit rate for attack cards that cost 0 by 10%. Since Luke is all about creating these attack cards for 0 AP and critting a lot, this is the absolute perfect weapon for his kit. For your armor slot, you will use the Fairy King crown, which increases your critical hit chance from everything that you do by 6%. And then, as it will be the case for a lot of characters, for most characters, you don't necessarily have to put this onto Luke, but one character per team should always carry the item Water Drops of the Goddess, because it gives you +1 storage, so you will be able to store AP, 1 AP in fact, and save it for the next turn. That is one of the best items in the game in general. Now every single character has one spot, one option for a mythical item, and if you want to go for that with Luke, that you don't have to do this. Luke is a character where you don't have to necessarily do this. But if you would choose so, then the Foggy Crystal Ball would be your best choice. This increases your flat damage by 40% for every attack card that costs you 0. And again, all we are about is creating bullets that cost 0 and are attack cards. So those would deal 40% more damage. That is of course, needless to say, very very good. Now for the neutral cards, Luke doesn't need any of the neutral cards because you want to get as many rapid fires. That's the whole point. You don't want to bloat your build with anything that would not give you either bullets or attack multiple times, right? So you want to attack of course multiple times. That is very very beneficial because you are all about critting in the first place, and you have teammates that apply vulnerable and mark of course, and the more marks and the more vulnerable debuffs are applied, and the more you attack, the more you make use of those debuffs. Okay, I think that is needless to explain. Honorable mentions, if you want to go for neutral or forbidden cards, right? If you want to add cards to Luke's kit that don't belong to him already, then the aggressive mutant is an honorable mention here for sure. That is very, very good for every single DPS character in the game. You get an attack card out of your deck and you deal 50% more damage with it. Splendid, that will help you finding your rapid fire in the first place, and you even deal a little bit more damage with it. That aggressive mutant is one of the best neutral cards or forbidden cards in the entire game, and it will reoccur as an honorable mention for pretty much every single DPS character in the game. Additionally though, you can go of course for any card. I have here the Shy Gardener as an example, but every single card that would allow you to attack multiple times is very, very beneficial. A card that allows you to attack twice or 3 times, or like the Shy Gardener here, that is of course one of the best cards as an honorable mention, because you attack 4 times and you apply 3 marks. That is exactly what Luke wants. Attacking multiple times. 4 times is crazy, and then 3 mark, that is also something he wants from his allies, right? So Shy Gardener, wonderful. If you want more recommendations as to what items you should go for and put onto Luke, then everything that increases your flat damage, of course. Even better would be things that synergize around crits. For example, there's an item here in this game that whenever you crit, you gain a shield. Or whenever you crit, you heal yourself a little bit, you know? Everything that increases your damage or synergizes or even increases your crits. That's about it. So now we can move on to the next character, which is Khalipe. And again, just as it will be all the time, you can see the perfect epiphanies already right here. Now you want to remove a card. That will be Tear's Vow, that gives you a shield, and you can even remove the attack card Lashing. And the card that you're gonna copy is of course Vulture Ejection. That is what Khalipe is all about. We wanna synergize around the mechanic Haven, or as it is called nowadays, Celestial. We will call this Celestial from now on. So whenever you yourself with Khalipe or a teammate would play a card that costs 2 or more, the cards with Celestial on them, they will be played for free, aka your Vulture Ejection. Alright, then for the items, your weapon, is called Sunsetting Bow, and what it does is it adds 20% more damage, 2 attack cards that cost 2 AP or more. That leads to your Vulture Ejection, deal more damage. Cool. Now comes the part that is pretty broken, because you can see that the Vulture Ejection also gives you a shield every time you play it, and you will play it every time for free. So every single turn, pretty much, if you copy this enough, right, and get rid of the Tear's Vow and the Lashing, you will pretty much every single turn apply a shield to yourself for free. Then we have the Lush Seaweed Armor that says that whenever you would obtain a shield, that shield increases by 30%. Yeah, of course. What it says specifically, to be 100% accurate, is that whenever you obtain a shield, you obtain another shield that is 30% fixed. Okay. And you have the other item, your mythic, in your accessoire slot, called Dormant Seeds. And this one as well. It says 100% shield is what you gain once per turn whenever you play a card with a cost of 2 or more. So once per turn, you will use Vulture Ejection, right? Most of the times that will happen. That applies a shield. This shield is increased by 30% through Lush Seaweed Armor, and by a further 100% because of our item Dormant Seeds. This will net you a crazy amount of shield every single turn. And yeah, you do this by simply using your main DPS, like a character like Haru, that evolves around playing attack cards that cost 2 AP or more. Splendid. Now we're gonna talk about the neutral cards that you could add to your kit. You can freely do that. It is not truly recommended to add any cards because you're all about actually finding your vulture ejections. You want to have this preferably every single turn, so you should keep the amount of cards in Khalipe's kit as low as possible. But they are so good and so many options from neutral cards that you can consider playing those as well. Like, for example, right? Hand-to-hand combat. It deals 200% defense-based damage, which you do with vulture ejection as well, and you gain crystallization. Crystallization says that per stack of crystallization at the end of the turn, you gain a shield, right? Lush Seaweed Armor comes in clutch here one more time. Then we have Protective Scout, gives you a shield. If you have no shield, you gain even more shield, right? Again, Lush Seaweed Armor. Then we have something that also has the mechanic of Celestial. So that's an item you can always take no matter what, right? It's called First Aid Kit and you play it for free because of Celestial and it's a big heal. That is fantastic. We have another card, Fortitude, 150% shield. If you combo this, which you will always do because you can always play this after your vulture ejection is triggered for free, and then you gain another 150% shield at the start of next turn. Splendid, right? And of course we want to mention the aggressive mutant one more time, because what does it do? It finds your vulture ejection. So you play aggressive mutant, you find vulture ejection, you play Haru's anchor shot, you trigger the vulture ejection, boom, that vulture ejection now does 50% more damage. So a lot of pretty solid and viable options here that you can go for when it comes to neutral cards. If you want more recommendations for your items, right, your equipment, Lush Seaweed Armor and Dormant Seeds are pretty much a given. That is what you should truly aim for. If you just cannot get your hands onto those items, use whatever item synergizes around shields, giving you more shields, etc. At the start of the turn, you gain 140% fixed shield. At the end of the turn, you gain a shield, right? That kind of stuff. Cards that provide you shields. And yeah, for your weapon, you can go whatever increases your damage output basically. But yeah, these three items, especially the Seaweed Armor and the Dormant Seeds in combination, are like what you should truly aim for. There are not many other options, but there are, as I just mentioned. So that's about Khalipe. Let's move on. Next up we have Magna, who's all about applying crystallization and counter-attacking, giving yourself shields pretty much, right? That is what crystallization does. So we play the same combination of Lush Seaweed Armor and Dormant Seeds, just as it was with Khalipe. Her weapon is a little bit different though, as we have this military grenade, and what that does is, whenever you would play a buff card, you would apply 100% fixed damage to all enemies. Now if you look at Magna's kit, pretty much every single thing that she does is playing a buff card. You have double frost shield, you have ice wall, frost charge, everything is a buff, and therefore you make a lot of use out of this military grenade, and the 100% fixed damage to all enemies triggers more often than with a lot of other characters. So there we go. If you want recommended options for the items, we have Assault Gauntlets, who give you at the start of the battle 2 counter-attack, splendid, and we have the Contaminated Helmet, which just increases your max HP and your defense. So more HP for your entire team is splendid, and your defense-based damage will increase thanks to that. Then for the removal, you don't really want to remove anything from her kit, if I'm being honest. You could remove the Frozen Fist, but it is not necessary to actually do that. But yeah, more onto that in just a second. The recommended neutral cards is you could go for Protective Shout to, yeah, again, right, you apply yourself a pretty heavy shield with it, and you trigger the lush seaweed armor and maybe even the dormant seeds. But that is not too much of a big deal. The real juicer is the hand-to-hand combat card, because you deal defense-based damage, you give yourself 2 crystallization. That is really good, and you do all of this for 1 AP. That is pretty much the best source of damage you can possibly have. The problem is that this card exhausts, and that's why I would highly recommend you find this card, you epiphany this card, and then you copy it. That is the card that you should actually have in your arsenal, in your kit, as many times as possible. Refresh the shop, go for the training in the campfires to find this card as much as possible, right? Have it in your kit as many times by copying and finding it via using credits, visiting the shop, and the training. Alright, and yeah, that's all there is to say about Magna already, so let's move on. We have Rin. The card that you want to remove is Protection, the skill that gives you a shield. And the card that you want to copy is Drawing Slash. Remember, you want to copy this, of course, as much as you can. You want to have as many copies of Drawing Slash in your kit as you possibly can get your hands onto. Then, talking about the items is where things get really interesting. Let's start off with her weapon. You have 2 different choices. The one that I would recommend is called Violet Butterfly's Whip. And what it does is it gives you 10% damage to attack cards that cost 1 or less. Perfect for a character like Rin. Then the second weapon option here, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I will try my best. It is called the Destruction of Erisichthen. And what this does is that every single attack card has a 5% chance to hit twice. That is of course very good, especially for a character like Rin. You will see this when we talk about the next 2 items especially. But a 5% chance is a little bit too pathetic to, like, for me to like really recommend this, right? Most of the times this card won't do anything, because 5% is just not enough, even though like we play a lot of attack cards with Rin, but still. Then the other 2 items, of course, the reoccurring Lush Seaweed Armor. You know this item by now. And we have another item here called Revelations of Futility. And this one gives you a 20% fixed shield every time you play an attack card. This is limited to trigger 10 times per turn, and this is like one of, if not even the most broken combination of items in the entire game. The amount that you, like the amount of attack cards that you have to play is of course very high, but with characters like Tressa, like Rin, who play a lot of attack cards for just 0 AP, you can make this work. And every time you play an attack card, you get a 20% fixed shield, and you trigger the Lush Seaweed Armor. So for every single attack card that you trigger, that you play, you gain a 50% fixed shield. But you can have this combination of cards on a second character as well. For example, we played this combination of items on Rin and Ray, and another team with Tressa and Hugo. Both of these, all 4 of these characters, in fact, they played this exact combination of items, because the amount of shield that you regenerate with this kind of combination every single turn is through the roof busted. It's one of the best things that in the game. Right, so there we go. Then we have to talk about neutral cards as well, and here is where things get even more interesting, because every single card, neutral card, that plays for 0 AP, is an attack type card, targets, and has no drawback, is perfect for Rin. And there are 3 cards in total that accomplish that job in this game. One is Quick Shelling, this one right here. 80% damage for 0 AP, attack type card, you draw a card. There's absolutely no drawback to use this card. Then we have the card called Hidden Bullet. 0 AP, attack type card, you deal damage, and if you retain this, you deal even more damage. No drawback, free damage for 0 AP. You trigger the Revelations of Futility and the Seaweed Armor for free, basically. And the last card, last but not least, we have Quick Draw. You deal damage, you apply a mark, you do this for free, and you trigger Revelations of Futility and Seaweed Armor. Those are the 3 neutral cards that whenever you find them, you can take them if you play a character like Rin. And that's about it. We can now move on to the next character, which is Orlea. And that is a character that she keeps leaving me completely speechless. There are no synergies with this character going on. This character doesn't do anything. I don't know how this character exists, why she is here. She is completely useless. This is one of the worst characters in the entire game. Really. So let's go over it. She's all about, by the way, retain effects and triggering those and create creations. The ones that you see right here. That's what she's about. So for the cards that you want to remove, I would remove Heaven's Healing, that heals you for 100%, but it's not truly necessary. Neutral cards, there is 0 neutral card that would have any beneficial effect for Orlea. The items, the equipment that you should watch out for to get your hands on in a Chaos run, for the weapon and the armor, it doesn't even matter. There's also nothing that truly sticks out when it comes to synergizing with Orlea either. There is this Corrupted Core item though, it's a mythic. And what it does is it gives you 15 defense and 20% shield whenever a retain is triggered. That finally is something that has synergy with Orlea and is pretty good. That is a must-have item. And that is truly all anyone can tell you about Orlea. There's no other synergy available in the entire game for this character. So let's move on. And then we have Mei Lin. Yay, I love Mei Lin. It's one of my favorite characters, especially when we talk about the females, but that's besides the point. So the card that you can remove is Flame Dragon Guardian. You only remove the Flame Dragon Guardian when you do not play Mei Lin together with Hugo. If you play her together with Hugo, you wanna keep the Flame Dragon Guardian. And the card that you wanna copy is Rising Dragon Spire. Of course, as it always is, as many times as you possibly can. Cool. Then we have to talk about her items. For her weapon, you use Dark Grip's Claws. That increases your damage with everything by 20%. Splendid. We're gonna attack a lot, and therefore having a 20% damage increase flat for everything is gonna be very, very beneficial. For our armor, we're gonna use the Fairy King's Crown again, because the 6% crit increase is very, very beneficial for pretty much every single character that attacks a whole bunch. Then for our accessoire, we have the Eye of the Eyeless, which increases the damage output for basic attacks by 30%. We're gonna use basic attacks like our strike a whole bunch, because we accumulated with unity and attack of defense. So having a 50% increase, damage increase on strike is super, super good, because remember, the Dark Grip's Claws also increase our damage by a further 20% on everything. Plus 30% makes strike hit incredibly hard. For her equipment, you of course you max out her critical hit chance and critical damage as much as you possibly can. You, for neutral cards, don't want anything. You want to use Mei Lin's cards as much as you possibly can, right? The Strike, the Rising Dragon Spire, and you will accumulate the strikes by using Unity Attack of Defense, and together with the synergy with your items, you will hit like a truck and a lot. The only card that I can mention is the Aggressive Mutant, because again, that simply searches out one of your own attack cards, and you deal in another 50% increased damage with that attack card. You probably want to go for Rising Dragon Spire, right? But it's random and it doesn't really matter what it gives you. It will always come in clutch. So if you want a card for Mei Lin that is neutral, the Aggressive Mutant is pretty much all you should ever take. And that's about Mei Lin. It's Veronica, and this is the first character that we're gonna cover that has multiple very good save datas. So let's first of all cover her single target save data. That is, of course, you're gonna go for the enhanced ballista, right? The card that you wanna remove is the Illusion of Golden Daffodils, and I would not recommend you copy anything for Veronica. It's always better to copy cards for her teammates instead of herself. If you want to copy something for this single target build, it would be Rapid Fire, simply because of the chance to create yourself another ballista. For the items, we have Second Method as her weapon, because it increases the damage of follow-up attacks by 30%, and her Ballista Shot, which is the most important damage output that Veronica has, is a follow-up attack, an extra attack. Then we have this Fairy King's Crown again, 6% crit. Veronica is all about critting, and 6% critical hit rate is just way too good to ever pass up. Then Veronica is special in the case of her excelling around passive damage, like her ballista, you know what I mean? You wanna deal damage without using AP, without like really doing anything, so to speak. And the Moon of Destruction is the best accessory, because it deals 100% fixed damage to all enemies just at the start of the battle. It's like the same kind of stuff that the ballista does, right? But here, of course, it's single target damage at the end of every single turn. Here, at the start of the battle, you deal a little bit of damage to all of your enemies, which helps more than any accessory in this game would. For neutral cards, the best neutral card in the game for single target damage is Sacred Strike. That is another option, that if you go for this Sacred Strike, you don't have to go for any neutral card, right? But if you want to, you take Sacred Strike. And that is another very good viable option for you to copy. Let's say, right, you would get Sacred Strike, and you can Epiphany it really fast, and then you would gain the option to copy a card. Then you should actually take Sacred Strike even over Rapid Fire. Another good option is Leap Attack, because you can see that with Repose, Veronica has the ability to draw a card. Also, Sir Kowalski draws your cards, right? So triggering the inspiration here for Leap Attack actually happens quite frequently, and then you deal damage just for 0 AP again passively, right? You don't even lose a card, because this card also draws your card back. But in general, for the single target ability, for the neutral cards, every single card that is cheap and deals single target damage is an option, right? But I would honestly just recommend, if you can get your hands on Sacred Strike, take that. Otherwise, refrain from taking neutral cards altogether. And for the items, of course, everything that increases your damage output is gonna work just fine. In case you wouldn't get your hands onto, onto these 3 items right there. Everything that increases your damage output flat is a good choice. Alright, then let's talk about her second save data, which is gonna be an AoE damage based build. So you want to remove the illusion of golden Dafolidus, you want to remove the rapid fires, and for this upgrade here, for this Epiphany upgrade, for your ballista you take the giant ballista, so that it actually deals AoE damage. The items gonna stay all the same. What the key part here is of course the removal of the cards that I just mentioned, plus a neutral card that you have to get your hands onto multiple times. You have to Epiphany it and you have to copy it. And the card I'm talking about is Maneuvering Fire. You want to have as many different copies of Maneuvering Fire as possible, right? And that is the key. That is what this build is all around. Without this card, the build wouldn't work. So get your hands onto Maneuvering Fire, Epiphany it, copy it, hunt for it in the shop, reset the shop, go for the trainings, and so on and so forth, right? So get Maneuvering Fire and remove Rapid Fire and Illusion of Golden Dafolidus. Get the Epiphany upgrade for the giant ballista, and then you're gonna be golden and you have a very strong AoE damage build on your hands. Okay. Then we have a third build actually that is all about you drawing cards. That rose in popularity with the release of the character Yuki, because Yuki is all about triggering the inspiration, and that leads to you benefiting, or to Yuki benefiting a lot from having partners, teammates by her side that draw her a lot of cards. And what this build is all about, it's all about removing pretty much, you want to get rid of your entire kit basically. You want to remove the rapid fires, the illusions, the bombardment prep, and you want to fill your kit with repose. You copy this as much as you possibly can. Plus, you're gonna fill your kit with neutral cards that draw your cards. The best options here is to take gear back, simply flat out draws your 2 cards, find it, Epiphany it, copy it, right? Another very, very viable option and good way to go is quick shelling. So if you would manage to find these cards, copy repose, find gear bags and quick shelling, and in the end your kit would look like something like this, that would be splendid, and that would, yeah, may turn you like kind of into a support. And that is gonna be the route that if you want to be the sub DPS specifically for the character Yuki, then this is gonna be your build. There we go. Now we can move on to another character. Alright, we have Renoa, and the card that you're gonna remove is obviously the Black Veil. That gives you 100% shield, that's useless. And the card that you're gonna copy is the Flower of Devoured Fate. That's the most prominent card for her to copy because it increases your consistency by the most amount. It gives you exactly what you want. And those are dirge bullets. You want to turn your cards in your hand into dirge bullets, and the Flower of Devoured Fate does exactly that. Of course, if you already have like 2 or maybe even 3 Flower of Devoured Fate in your kit at your disposal, then you can also copy cards like Echo of Sorrow once, or an Instant Judgment. You know, you have multiple viable options. But first, copy the Flower of Devoured Fate. Now onto her items. She is very versatile when it comes to her, at least 2 item slots. One is her weapon. There are a lot of weapons that increase your damage output against enemies with shields on them, or you increase your damage output when they are ravaged, you know. My favorite is the Executioner's Edge here, that leads you to deal 15% more damage against enemies that are below 50% HP. I think that fits Renoa the best personally. For her armor, you can take any armor that you find that would increase your damage output in any way, shape or form. For armor, there are not a lot of armors in this game that would actually increase your damage output. And among those who do, my favorite is the Shield of the Watcher. It simply does, whenever you take damage, you apply a mark to the enemy. Very simple and straightforward. Now there's one item, this mythical item right here, and that is an absolute must-have in your kit. The other two items are replaceable. This one here isn't. It is called the Eye of the Punisher, and that leads to you dealing 30% more damage whenever an enemy would be alone. So you see, the best content to tackle with Renoa are bosses that have no ads. And to increase your damage by 30% is massive against those bosses. So that is the must-have item, the Eye of the Punisher. Neutral cards, you don't want to really take neutral cards with Renoa. If you do, then I already told you earlier that Sacred Strike is the best neutral card in the game if we talk about dealing single target damage. So that would be the only option. Now, you shouldn't take it, right? You shouldn't take any neutral card. If you do, then it's Sacred Strike. If you do decide to go that route, then switch out at least your weapon, maybe even the armor, but mainly your weapon, and take a weapon that increases your damage output against targets that are ravaged. And that's gonna be it for Renoa. Okay, let's talk about Hugo. The card that you wanna get rid of, that you want to remove, is the defense system. And the card that you want to copy is Dingo Howling. Now, when it comes to his items, those are irreplaceable, and we have talked about those before. Let's tackle first his weapon. It's called Second Method. It leads to you dealing 30% more damage with extra attacks. The attacks that you trigger via your Commence the Hunt, those are extra attacks, follow-up attacks, and they deal 30% more damage. That is what you are all about, so that's gonna be by far the best weapon in the game for you. Now the combination of Lush Seaweed Armor and Revelations of Futility, this is one of the most broken combinations of things in the entire game. Whenever you would use an attack card, you would gain a 20% fixed shield. You can do this up to 10 times per turn. If you gain a shield, whenever you gain a shield, the Lush Seaweed Armor increases that shield by 30%. So every single time you trigger you use an attack type card, you trigger your follow-up attack, your extra attack, then you gain a 50% fixed shield every single time. And your teammate, like whoever it is, right? Tressa, Mei Lin, whoever that might be, will also carry this very combination of items and trigger it a lot. So it will lead to you getting such a ridiculously high amount of shields that you will become unkillable. And as I said, this is one of the best combinations in the entire game. So definitely go for that. You don't want to play any neutral cards or anything like that at all. There's like simply no way. All you want to do is you want to use your targeting attack type cards. You want to get your Commence the Hunt stacks via Dingo Howling. And that's going to be about it. The Epiphany for Hunting Instincts is of course key, because every single upgrade card in the game that you don't have guaranteed in your starting hand is useless. So that is very, very important to keep in mind there. And that's about it when it comes to Hugo. Then we have Yuki. She also has multiple different save datas that are very, very viable. The card that you want to remove here is Flowing Parry, of course. Again, it's a reoccurring trend that we always remove the card that gives us 100% shield. And the best option for you to copy a card is Trickery Strike, because for the same reason, again, it gives you the most amount of synergy. Another very good card to copy is Flash Slash. Once you have like 2-3 copies of Trickery Strike, you can copy a Flash Slash there as well, because this is your main source of damage, obviously. Then the items, your weapon will be Chimera Knight. That increases your damage output from attack type cards by 35% once you or one of your allies has drawn a card by an ability. Your teammates are all about drawing cards for you, so that is gonna be by far the best option. For the armor slot, we have Fairy King's Crown again, because we get more critical hit rate. We need to crit, and we need a lot of critical damage, in fact, because otherwise Yuki is not what she could be, right? She needs critical hit chance and the critical damage to hit the numbers. That is very, very important. Since this build is all about dealing AoE damage, we focus on the Moon of Destruction for additional AoE damage right out of the gate. Okay, now let's look at her single target build as well real quick. For this AoE build, by the way, you do not take any neutral cards, not even maneuvering fire or anything. Yuki does everything by herself and she doesn't need any support there. So don't bloat your build. Now onto the single target attack build. There we have to replace 2 epiphanies. One for Trickery Strike, and the most important one is for Flash Slash, so that those 2 abilities, especially Flash Slash, actually deal single target damage. And that's pretty much all about it, right? You still replace the flowing parry, get rid of it, and copy the Flash Slash or the Trickery Strike even for that matter. Now, for this build you can use neutral cards, and you in fact should use neutral cards. The one that I always mention, of course, is Sacred Strike. But for Yuki specifically, there are cards like Leap Attack that trigger inspirations. There are also forbidden cards, a bunch of those, that draw you cards, trigger inspiration effects, and all of those cards are very, very good options for a single target attack build for Yuki. And you're gonna need these neutral cards to make this single target build even viable. So get your hands on everything that triggers inspiration and deals single target damage, of course. And yeah, you can add like a Sacred Strike if you find it as well, because yeah, for the reasons that I explained for other characters earlier. And that's gonna be it about Yuki. Okay, let's move on to Haru. The card that you wanna get rid of here is, you guessed it, the Anchor Drop. The card that gives you 100% shield, right? And the card to copy is the Anchor Pointer. You see, there is like a trend going on here with the card that we copy is always the card that gives us the most amount of consistency. That is the case for like pretty much every single character in the game. Not all of them, but for most of them. So copy Anchor Pointer. The items here, the weapon, we have Sunsetting Bow again. That increases the damage output from cards that cost 2 or more, like Anchor Shot, by 20%. We are all about dealing as much damage and using Anchor Shot as much as possible, so that Sunsetting Bow is gonna come in very clutch. Then Haru has no armor in this game that is truly beneficial, that truly stands out for her. So I will leave this spot open and you can go for whatever you like the most. For her accessoire, the Water Drops of the Goddess is gonna be the best option there, because in case you need to save up AP, which is super good for Haru because she's AP hungry, you can do that, and yeah, that's gonna be splendid. Then of course she has a second save data that evolves around dealing damage to multiple enemies, the AoE target damage build. Let's go over that one as well real quick. For this AoE build, we're gonna change the Epiphany from Power Charge to this one right here, to be always, so that we always have the attribute advantage. That is gonna be the card that you copy then instead of Anchor Pointer, of course, keep that in mind. And here you can go for a neutral card. You should, right? The card that you copy is Power Charge. And the neutral card that you're gonna take, as much as you can find it, is Maneuvering Fire. You can even change the accessoire slot to Moon of Destruction if you wish. Depending on how many Maneuvering Fires you find, you actually wanna do that, but you don't have to. Find Maneuvering Fire, copy, power charge. Those are the two very important things here. And of course, don't forget to change the epiphany for power charge as well, if you choose to go for that build. And that's gonna be about Haru. Next up we have Kayron. The card that you're gonna remove is, surprise surprise, the sphere that would heal you by 100%. And the card you're gonna copy for this single target build is Black Hole. His items are the Void of the Devourer, which leads to you that every time you exhaust a card, the next card will deal 25% more damage. That is ridiculous for Kayron. More ridiculous even is the Psionic Combat Suit. What that does is, whenever you exhaust a card, you gain 30% fixed shield. And remember that you will play Kayron with a teammate like Tressa, who carries the most broken combination of items in the entire game, with Lush Seaweed Armor and Revelations of Futility. So in combination with these two items and the Psionic Combat Suit, the shield that you generate is out of this world busted. One more time, this is the most broken combination of items in the entire game. Lush Seaweed Armor and Revelations of Futility. And Kayron synergizes with this like no one else in the game does. Then for his accessoire, one of your teammates or yourself has to carry the Water Drops of the Goddess. If one of your teammates carries this, then you can switch this out for Kayron and put in the Golden Rule instead, which just simply increases your overall damage output by 15%. Kayron does not use any neutral cards whatsoever. You would just blow up his build, so do not take any neutral card, no matter what, ever. Okay, he has a build that evolves around AoE damage as well, so let's go over that one as well. For this AoE build, we do not change around any epiphanies or items like it would be with other characters, but instead of copying the Black Hole as much as possible, we copy the Brand of Annihilation as much as possible. Here, additionally, of course, like it always is with these AoE builds, you can take the neutral card Maneuvering Fire. Get your hands onto this card as much as you possibly can, but copy the Brand of Annihilation instead of the Black Hole. That's the key part. Of course, items, yeah, you could switch the Golden Rule with the Moon of Destruction, right? I mean, yeah, it's also a reoccurring trend. You get the point at this time. So that's about Kayron. Then we have Nia. She's all about healing and drawing cards, adding consistency to your team while keeping them alive, and drawing and finding cards. The card that you want to remove here is Stroke, and the card that you want to copy is Adagio. That nets you the most amount of consistency possible. Then for her items we have the branch of the sacred tree, and whenever we heal, we would deal 25% fixed damage to all enemies. That is perfect, because you can see that a lot of our cards heal. For her armor, we have Fragment of the Empty Void. That leads to you at the start of the battle. You can look at your starting hand, you can discard up to 3 cards. Depending on how many cards you choose to discard, you draw them back from your deck, right? What that leads to is, again, consistency. With that, you are pretty much guaranteed to have a very good starting hand and to come out of the gate swinging. Then Nia is the perfect place to put an item like the Goddess of Tears or whatever it was called. The Water Drops of the Goddess. That's like a perfect item to put onto Nia, because she doesn't profit too much from any other stuff. If you put the water drops of the goddess onto another character, then you can go for any item that gives you like a shield at the start of the turn or at the end of the turn, or you heal at the end of the turn for 40%. You know, something that gives you heal or shields. Then the neutral cards are quite important for Nia as well, because there are a bunch of quite good ones. We want to, of course, aim for cards that draw us additional cards. That's what Nia is all about. And so the famous gear bag draws us 2 cards, right? Perfect fit for Nia here. We deal damage, we draw a card for 0 AP with quick shelling. Perfect. We have the shell forming cell. Because we draw a lot of cards, we will have a lot of cards in our hand. And for each card in our hand, we gain shield. The more cards we have in hand, the bigger the shield from shell forming cell is, and therefore it's the perfect card to put into Nia's kit. Last but not least, we have energy barrier. Now that applies a shield for 0 AP, which is good, and we give Nia the option to provide an AP to our team. Splendid, right? Exactly what she needs. So gear bag, energy barrier, shell forming cell, quick shelling, all very good neutral cards to make Nia, yeah, at least a little bit of a better character, depending on what you find and how much you find. And that's about it. You copy Adagio, excuse me again. You, yeah, pick items. They don't matter really much. You can pretty much use whatever you want. Provide heal, provide shields, and that's gonna be about it for Nia. We have Selena. The card that you're gonna remove is Emergency Shielding, and the card that you're gonna copy is Sniper's Domain. Simply for the reason that this is an upgrade card that you cannot guarantee to be in your starting hand. It is extremely important and you have to find it. Therefore, you have to copy it. There's no way around it. For her items, the weapon that I would recommend is Sneering Dagger, because whenever you would ravage an enemy, you would apply 2 vulnerable to all enemies. And you see, Selena is all about debuffing the enemy, so to speak, with applying mark damage, dealing tenacity damage, right? Mainly about her marks. And if you can add vulnerable to the mix, that's like the best thing you can do. There's unfortunately no weapon in the game that also applies marks, so vulnerable is the next best thing, and that's why I chose Sneering Dagger. Then the armor is gonna be Fragment of the Empty Void. For the simple reason again, you have to find your Sniper's Domain, and you have to find it early. There's no better item than the Fragment of the Empty Void to help you with that. Then for the accessoire slot, I choose Moon of Destruction to to help me come out of the game swinging by immediately dealing damage to all enemies. Then neutral cards. There are some honorable mentions here. One would be Maneuvering Fire, again coming out of the game swinging, synergizing with Moon of Destruction and Drone Bombing. Another honorable mention would be Sacred Strike, because we already deal tenacity damage with Tactical Maneuver. Dealing even more would lead to us really ravaging the enemy like out of the wazoo, basically. But the true best card, neutral card, to get your hands on with Selena is Quick Draw. For the simple fact that this is actually guaranteed in your starting hand and you apply a mark right out of the gate. That is what Selena is all about. She's all about applying these marks, and therefore Quick Draw is the best possible choice. There you go. That's about it for Selena. Next up we have Tressa. The card that you're gonna remove is Touch of Darkness, that heals you for 104%. And the card that you're gonna copy is Unsheathed Dagger. Easy. Her equipment is the RPS rifle that increases the crit rate for attack cards that cost 0 by 10%, because the shadow daggers that you are all about creating cost 0, their attack cards, and therefore their crit rate is increased by 10%. And then comes the most broken combinations of items and characters in the entire game, with Lush Seaweed Armor and the Revelations of Futility again. It gives you more armor than anything else in the entire game would, you know? The point is, you are completely invincible, and it is one of the most broken combinations in the game. In fact, it is the most broken combination of things that I have seen in this game so far, right? And yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere on YouTube, on Twitter, and so on and so forth. Like, I have never seen something like this. So definitely worth to aim for. You should refrain from using neutral cards because you want to draw desperately into your daggers as much as possible. But if you want to use neutral cards, here are some cards that you could use. Leap Attack, because you draw a card, you deal damage, you have to draw into this, otherwise it costs 1 AP. So it is a little bit inconsistent, but still worth an honorable mention. Then a really good card is Quick Shelling, because you deal damage for 0 AP and you draw a card. No drawback, it's an attack type card that deals damage, and therefore it triggers, right, Revelations of Futility and Lush Seaweed Armor. That is the reason why it's good. Same goes for Quick Draw. It's an attack card, you use it for 0 AP, you deal a little bit of damage and apply a mark, and you trigger the Seaweed Armor and the Revelations of Futility. And there you go. That's it about Tressa. Oh yeah, one more thing before it's that about Tressa. There's a game on my Discord server that actually managed to accomplish this build right here in, yeah, pretty much perfection. Look, he has 4 daggers. He managed to copy this card 4 times. He has an epiphany on it, even on all 4 copies. He has the Shadow Reload upgrade epiphany, Vital Attack, perfect epiphany, the Curse, perfect epiphany. He has all 3 items. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is a build to such a perfection that is almost impossible to accomplish. But here you can see it is not impossible if you just set your mind to it and get a little bit lucky. So aim for perfection. You can do it. Maybe. But you see, someone got that lucky. So here we go. I just wanted to show that because when he posted this earlier today, it blew my fucking mind out of the water. But now that's about Tressa. Then we have Amir. You don't want to remove any card because you need the shield. It also gives you a Metalize. So don't get rid of your Steel Barrier. The card that you want to copy depends on if you want to go for a single target build. In that case, you would copy Metal Pierce. If you want to go for an AoE type damage build, you copy Full Metal Hurricane. Those are options. The card that I actually would recommend you copy is a neutral card, which we will talk about in just a second. Then her item build consists of Sunsetting Bow, Lush Seaweed Armor, and Dormant Seeds. Simply, you deal more defense-based damage thanks to your Sunsetting Bow. You are reliant on providing a lot of shields to trigger the follow-up attacks of yours. You need shields, you will gain shields. So buffing those shields is very, very beneficial thanks to Lush Seaweed Armor. And then the same thing applies to Dormant Seeds. When the first time each turn you get a shield, that shield is increased by 100%. So it synergizes very well with the defense-based characters, this build here overall, this item build. So that is what Amir will profit the most from. Then the neutral cards. The honorable mention here is Fortitude, because it gives you a shield this turn, and it will give you a shield next turn as well. Very, very beneficial again to trigger Lush, Seaweed Armor, the Dormant Seeds, and your follow-up attacks. Then Protective Shout, same thing. You provide yourself a shield. That's what you're all about. That's what you're gonna need. And then what I would recommend to make your main source of damage is actually hand-to-hand combat, because it gives you crystallization, which you so desperately need, and it deals also defense-based damage, which synergizes well with all the shielding and the metal eyes and everything that you get. So yeah, definitely aim to get your hands onto hand-to-hand combat, and if you can get it early, epiphany it early, then you should copy it. If not, then copy the cards that I mentioned earlier. And that's it for Amir. We have Lucas. The card that you're gonna remove is Shielding Bomb, the one that gives you 100% shield. And you're gonna replace it with Flamethrower, so that is gonna be the card that you copy. If you don't copy the neutral card that we will talk about in just a second. Let's go over his item build first. It is gonna be the Dark Grip's Claws to increase your flat damage by 20%. You kinda need that, to be honest. Then the armor is the Shield of the Watcher. That is one of the few armors in the game that increase your damage output actually, and Lucas needs all the damage he can possibly get. Whenever you take damage, you apply a mark to whoever attacked you, and yeah, that increases your damage output then next turn. Then we have the Moon of Destruction for our accessoire, and yeah, that deals 100% fixed damage when the battle starts, so that is again a very, very good damage increase, and to come swinging right out of the gate. Something else that helps you with this is the neutral card that I highly recommend, called Maneuvering Fire. It's guaranteed in your starting hand, you do it for free, and you do damage to all enemies, which is what Flamethrower does as well. Moon of Destruction helps with this, so you will have a pretty significant amount of AoE damage at your disposal if you get your hands on Maneuvering Fire. Again, if you can get your hands onto Maneuvering Fire before you are actually able to copy a card for the first time, then don't copy Flamethrower, but copy Maneuvering Fire instead, especially if you get the Epiphany early on. And that's about Lucas. Lucas. Maribel is up next. Now the card that you're gonna remove, it doesn't really exist. You could remove the Shelter Kick, but you don't really have to do that. It doesn't really matter. The card that you're gonna copy though, that is very important, and that will be Shelter Hold. That is what Maribel is all about. That what makes her, not a good character, but a character that is worth mentioning because of this Shelter Hold card. Of course, you can go a little bit of a more offensive route, and if you want to do that, then you would copy the Maribel Shelter MK number 2. But the recommended one is of course Shelter Hold. And then for the item build, you guessed it, we're gonna go the full damage user. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, we're gonna go the defensive route here with stacking as much shield again as possible. Our what's it called? Sunsetting Bow will increase our damage output by a little bit, but not by much if I'm being honest. Then you know how this goes. Lush Seaweed Armor increases the shields that we get. We are all about getting shields. Dormant Seeds here, same story, right? Then we have neutral cards, of course. Like always, it is gonna be Protective Shout because of extra shields, needless to explain. And we have Fortitude, this turn a shield, next turn a shield, triggers the seed, triggers the armor. There we go. That's about Maribel. Alright, it's time to talk about Mika. The card that you're gonna remove, that can be either Water Arrow, you can remove Whirlpool even, maybe even Tactical Analysis, like you have options here. You should maybe get rid of Water Arrow and Whirlpool. That is usually the preferred route to go. And the card that you're gonna copy is Source of Water. Epiphany it and then copy it. That is the #1 best card in the entire game to copy, actually. So put a lot of emphasis on this. You should really have this card like at least 3 times with like Epiphany in your save data. For like pretty much every single team, because Mika is one of, if not even the best character in the game. She is played in every single team, so yeah, make sure you copy that Source of Water. Then her items, they don't really matter. There's no weapon in the game where you would go like, yo, this is Mika's weapon, that is super beneficial. It just doesn't exist. So for the weapon, take whatever you want, right? And for the other, even for the other 2 items, it's kind of the same story there as well. But here I have honorable mentions at least. And the first one is the Fragment of the Empty Void again. Then we have, of course, the Water Drops of the Goddess again. Should be on a character on every single team. Support slot is very good to actually put this item on, so you can increase the damage output for your DPS characters. And there we go. We have, of course, to talk about neutral cards yet. You should not bloat your kit with Mika because you want to draw into these sources of water. So usually you shouldn't add anything, but there's one card that sticks out as to be really efficient on Mika, and that card is Rally. Because you see, you will play a lot of cards with Mika herself, because Tactical Analysis is played for 0, Blessing of Waves is played for 1, Water Barrier is 1, the Source of Water costs you 0, she applies AP plus to your entire team, so your teammates will play more cards than they usually would without Mika, and this decreases the action count from the opponents pretty fast. With Rally, you can tackle this issue and increase the action count of all enemies by 3, and you even draw a card and you do it for free. So that is a very beneficial card for Mika. I would even say it's the only good neutral card for Mika, because everything else would be kind of bloating your kit, which is something you don't want. That's about Mika. Let's move on to the next character, which is Beryl. Now the card that you're gonna remove is Barrier, of course. And the card that you're gonna copy is Guilty Pleasure. Now if you're like, oh, that's boring, I wanna go for damage, man, what the hell, then you can also copy the charged shot. But you know how this goes by now. We copy the card that gives our kit the most amount of consistency for like 95% of the characters. And in Beryl's case, that is the Guilty Pleasure. Now onto her items, it doesn't really matter. For the weapon and the armor, it doesn't really matter. You can go for whatever you would like the most. I did go here for the Sneering Dagger because Beryl has a very high amount of burst damage. She's very likely to actually kill an enemy. And when she does, then she applies vulnerable to all the other enemies with this weapon. And I find this to be pretty effective. Then for the armor, I did go for Shield of the Watcher again, because it is pretty much the best armor in the game for characters that are about dealing damage. And yeah, that's why I chose it one more time. The only item that you truly need, that is like a core part of Beryl's build and what makes her good, is the Corrupted Core. Because whenever you retain, which Beryl is obviously all about, then you gain a shield. Since you do that very often, you do this multiple times per turn even, very often, you would help with shield generation in a pretty significant way. So that's about that. For her neutral cards, which she should definitely take, the one example that I will give, as I always do for single target damage, is Sacred Strike. But you can go for a lot of different neutral cards that will deal damage, even like Pulverize, or even cards that deal damage to all enemies, right? they can cost 2 AP or even 3, it doesn't really matter, because Beryl is free to use those, as you see, like with opening found or charged shot. They need to retain. You want to keep these cards in your hand, at least for one turn. And you don't want to use them. And that's what opens up the room to actually use neutral cards like Sacred Strike. And then next turn you use your cards in your kit, right? Then next turn you're gonna retain them again and use neutral cards again. Can be a constant cycle. And that's why putting a lot of neutral cards that deal damage into Beryl's kit is pretty sufficient. And there you go. We can move on. We have Cassius. The card that you're gonna remove is Mana Field, the one that heals you by 100%. And the card that you're gonna copy is obviously gonna be Joker. Why? You guessed it. Consistency. Then his item build, or his equipment build I should say, is pretty interesting, because for this guy you can actually go for a little bit of damage, because Dice Trick will hit for 0 AP and it hits like a truck, honestly. And you will use Devil Dice a lot, which also deals a little bit of damage to all enemies. So it is not that bad, considering he's a support type of character that excels at drawing you and finding you, recovering you cards. Alright, that's why the Chimera Knight is actually a very, very good ability, because you see, you draw a lot of cards and you have this ability with Dice Trick that you can hit like a truck. And a weapon that leads to you dealing 35% more damage when you draw through an ability is perfect. So that's why Chimera Knight is gonna be my recommended weapon for Cassius. Now the other two items are your standard things, right? Again, what's it called? Fragment of the Empty Void. Guarantee yourself a good starting hand. The Water Drops of the Goddess to store AP, right? Doesn't really matter. You can go for full damage here if you really wanted to. It is a viable option, but yeah, I would recommend to go for the usual supportive items, and yeah, not the ones that regenerate armor, of course, because that is not what Cassius is about. Then for neutral cards, yeah, you can go for cards that draw, like Quick Shelling. A little bit of damage, draws you an additional card, not too bad. You usually want to refrain from putting cards into Cassius' kit. You want to remove the card that is called cards, for example. You even want to remove the wild card. You want to remove, as I said, the Mana Field, right? You want to get rid of a lot of Cassius' kit so that you are able to draw into the Joker consistently. Adding neutral cards would defeat the whole purpose, but if you really want to do it, Quick Shelling is your best option. I want to mention Gear Bag real quick, because you would think, hey, that adds drawing power to Cassius, but he doesn't need it, and the Gear Bag costs 1 AP. That disqualifies it immediately. You have better options to draw cards for AP than the Gear Bag would be, so for Cassius that's a waste. Quick Shelling is at least free, and it deals a little bit of damage, so that's the most valuable choice. But again, refrain from using neutral cards with Cassius. And there we go, we can move on. Now we have everyone's favorite character, Owen. The card that you should remove is Weapon Block. The card that you should copy doesn't exist. You should not copy any card. Copy a card from one of his teammates. And yeah, now his item build is very strange, because he's a very strange character. He does a lot of different things, but he sucks at all of them, if I'm being completely honest. So I play this character a lot, actually. And my favorite options for weapons are actually the Crimson Sword. Whenever I use a targeting attack, I apply 3 agony to the target. I like that quite a bit on him. The other item I like, the other weapon I should say I like for him, is the Big Game Hunter. whenever I use, like, the first attack card that I use this turn with him deals 100% tenacity damage. That is actually better than one might expect. And so the best usage for Owen is to make him a shield provider, make him a shielder. And therefore, I know it might get boring at this point, but it is what it is, right? We use the lush seaweed armor with the dormant seeds to provide ourselves with as many shields as we possibly can. Yeah, other characters, they will provide more shields, sure, but we deal a little bit of damage while providing shields as well, more than other characters that would provide more shields would. So yeah, as I said, he's a little bit of a weird character. He does a lot of things, but he doesn't really do a thing nicely. He doesn't excel at anything. But yeah, anyways, let's move on to the neutral cards. Anything that deals single target damage is fine for him, honestly, like Pulverize, for example, and all that jazz. My two favorites, though, are of course the Sacred Strike. It also deals tenacity damage, which would synergize very well if you would use the weapon Big Game Hunter. And another card I really like because providing AP with him is not bad, and I use him as a shielder, so Energy Barrier also comes in very, very handy for him. It's definitely one of the best cards for Owen. So these two are very recommended, but yeah, anything that deals a little bit of or deals damage to one target is not too shabby. Sacred Strike and Energy Barrier are by far my favorites though, and that's about it for Owen. Alright, last but not least, we have the character Rei. And that's not even really a character, because all she does is provide morale. Of course, she has a little bit of void synergy going on in her kit as well, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is Predator's Blade. That's why I didn't showcase any items here, and spoiler alert, she will also not use any neutral cards. All you do with Rei is provide morale via Predator's Blade. And that's why you remove a lot of cards here. You remove the Dark Blades, you remove the material regeneration. You can even go further and remove, you can pretty much remove her entire kit if you wanted to. But yeah, remove the Dark Blades, remove material regeneration, and copy Predator's Blade as much as you possibly can. Whenever you can copy a card, you copy a card, and that's Predator's Blade. And then you play her together with Rin, and you make Rin go completely apeshit. And that's all there is to say when it comes to the character Rei. Remove her kit, copy Predator's Blade, use it to provide morale to Rin, and there you go. That's the whole character. Your item build doesn't really matter. You do not synergize around anything, right? You don't provide shields, you don't heal, you don't even really deal damage. All you do, again, one more time, is you provide morale. And that's gonna be about that. And now we finally did it, boys. That was a crap ton of work to put together. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate that a whole bunch. But until next time, don't forget to join the Discord server. Link to that in the description down below. If you like Chaos Zero Nightmare content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would also appreciate that one a whole bunch. Take care of yourselves, have a great day, peace and love.